Hey, what's up, guys? Imran here. I wanted to make a video going over how I think about the right model for whatever tasks I'm doing, right? So a lot of people know OpenAI and they know Anthropic, they know Claude Sonnet and Opus and GPT 5.5. Maybe you've heard of Gemini. There's been obviously like a lot of marketing spend put behind some of these kind of more mainstream models. But what a lot of people don't know is that there are tons of companies building competitors to these models. Oftentimes, some of these are cheaper. Some of them are better at certain tasks. And, one of the ways that you can kind of get the most out of your both personal agents and agents that you're building, to actually get real work done, is to actually play around with, picking the right model. And I did make two videos about Hermes agent. One, obviously, on my personal channel, and one was an interview I did with Greg Eisenberg. And almost all of the top comments or, a recurring theme I kept seeing was that everyone wants to know how to pick the right model. And in that video, I was actually running DeepSeek V4 Flash as my main model, which as of right now is probably the top model on OpenRouter. For those of you who don't know, OpenRouter is essentially a website where you can kind of come to OpenRouter, you put in your credit card, and for like just one account, you can try like hundreds of models. So instead of needing to sign up for an account on OpenAI and on Google and on Anthropic and on NVIDIA, you can just come to OpenRouter, put in your credit card or pay with crypto or whatever, and you have access to any type of model. And any application that uses like the OpenAI API spec is what I believe it's called, will be compatible with OpenRouter. You just have to swap the model name. And you can see here, this is like the openrouter.ai/models, and you can kind of come through and see all of the different models. You can compare them against each other. So you can see like they already have some comparisons set up for you. Like what are the most affordable models right now? It's DeepSeek V4 Flash. It's, I believe this, High 3 preview is it's a 10-cent model. There's obviously Gemini 2.5 Flash, and you can compare, okay, what is the context length of this model? Does it have reasoning? Is it just a text model? What's the price, input, output, cache price? The performance, right? So if you get it through OpenRouter, how many tokens per second would you get? So you can see here, like Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite gives you, 78 tokens per second if you use it through OpenRouter. Tokens per second is just like a measure of like speed, right? Think of like miles per hour is like how fast a car can go. Tokens per second is how fast the output from your model is. But you can see like, okay, it might be slightly more expensive than V4 Flash because it's 10 cents for a million tokens of input and 40 cents for a million tokens of output. Whereas DeepSeek V4 Flash is 18 cents for a million tokens of output. But cached input is cheaper, right? So there's a lot of different ways that you can compare models. And, maybe you're optimizing for speed, right? Maybe you have a use case where you just want like fast responses. Then you want to kind of look at this like latency and throughput. And this is, of course, if you're using it through, through OpenRouter. Maybe you care a lot about pricing, right? You can come in here and you can see, all right, well, for my personal agent that's deciding what food I eat or what workout I do, like I don't need the state of the art models that are going to be like $2 or $10 or $20 for a million tokens. If it's just going to tell me what workout to do today, I can probably get away with using like a really cheap model, right? So the general rule of thumb is that for personal agents, I like to use these kind of cheaper, more affordable models. So like you guys saw in the video, like I was using DeepSeek V4 Flash. A rule of thumb that I have though is that if I'm doing any like programming work, I like to use one of the flagship models, at least one of the flagship models that I can afford. So you can see here, like GPT 5.5 is about $5 for a million tokens, with $30 for a million tokens of output, which is way more expensive than V4 Flash. So I would find it actually really annoying or just really like wasteful to use GPT 5.5 to figure out what I should cook that day, right? So if I have a personal agent that's just doing like, I would consider these like very like kind of silly, like personal tasks. Like I don't need state of the art models. Like I can do that for, pennies on the dollar really. But if I'm writing code, if I'm doing a task that's like long running, that has lots of reasoning, of course, I'm going to want to use a state of the art model. So you can come into OpenRouter and you can use this to kind of like compare which models are best for which tasks, right? Like if you're concerned about doing image generation, if you're making like Instagram content, you can come in and, compare which ones are best. And if you're optimizing around price, you can find the pricing here. If you're optimizing around like performance or speed, You can like filter by that. But what's something that's really interesting that's come out recently is that OpenRouter now has an MCP. And what this MCP does, the way I understand it, is that you can connect your personal agent, you can connect your Codex, your Claude Code, your Hermes, your Openclaw, and you can ask it like, hey, like what's the actual best model for under, in this example, they say, what's the top coding model for under $2 per a million tokens, right? And it'll actually hit this endpoint here called the OpenRouter list benchmarks. And this is just an endpoint that OpenRouter has created and exposed publicly, so long as you have an API key that actually just shows you all of the top models. And so, you can ask your agent to help you pick the right model. So you no longer need to go in here and kind of figure out, what's the best model, what's the top model people are using, what's the best model for my task. Like those are like no longer questions that you have to answer and figure out. You can actually just come straight to the OpenRouter MCP. This will tell, your agent will basically hit this endpoint, and you can tell it what you're optimizing for. So you can ask your agent to ask OpenRouter for the best model for your budget, or maybe you can find the most performant model, right? So either way, you no longer really have to dig in through this leaderboard or go through and do like this model comparison, because you can actually have your agent do it for you. So if you're using Codex, if you're using Claude Code or Claude Desktop, if you're using, Openclaw, if you're using Hermes, like all of these, you can just install the MCP using like kind of this documentation, and then you'll never actually have to go figure out what the best model is. I think this is really powerful because, one of the most emerging skill sets that's going to be coming out, or that is already like a thing, is the ability to build agents. And part of building agents is one of the decisions you have to make is you have to figure out what model to use. So you have to understand like what's like the business, what is like the business objective, what constraints do they have, and then like which model is right for the task. And this is also really good for your kind of personal agents too, right? If you know that you're doing like a silly personal task of, just like deleting spam emails, you don't need to use state-of-the-art models to do that. You could probably use a cheaper one, and that way you'll save money, and then you'll also be able to optimize around, whatever you value. If you value price, you can find a way to optimize around that. If you value like just raw speed and performance, you'll find a way to optimize around that. And if you just value like what's the most amount of intelligence I can get, no matter the price, you can find a way to optimize around that as well. So I hope this answers the question about how I think about which models to use. My general rule of thumb is if I'm doing any sort of, coding work, whether it's personal, whether it's, professionally, I prefer to use like whatever state-of-the-art models I have available to me. Like right now I have a OpenAI subscription, like the $100 a month one. So I'll use like 5.5. If I have like an Anthropic subscription through work and I'm writing some code for work, like I'll probably use like, one of the latest Claude models. If it's for like personal stuff, like, like I have my personal agent that like, picks out the right recipes for me to eat that day or cook, I'll probably just use like a small model. There's really no need to have like, state-of-the-art intelligence, like helping me figure out what to eat that day. So that's just how I think about it. If I'm doing like any sort of like data entry, if I'm taking CSVs and converting it into a Google Sheet, like you can kind of get it with DeepSeek V4 Flash. And it's like pretty cheap. And I think the people have also shown that, that is probably that is the top model right now on OpenRouter. So, they're doing something right. Anyway, guys, I hope this explained, and made the model selection process a little bit easier. And sorry I haven't posted a video in so long. Later, guys.